Hey there everybody, Matt Carter here.
And Jessica Carter from CARTERMATT.com.
This is a video about Grey's Anatomy and Station 19, but it's not so much about here are the individual storylines happening every single week. It's more about the larger ecosystem that's going on within this universe, because you probably have recognized as of late there have been a lot more crossovers, if you want to call them that, through the first several weeks. And not only that, you've probably also seen that a lot of the promos are throwing both shows together into one. So the question that becomes a result of all this is pretty simple. Is ABC and are the show's producers in some ways hurting both shows by kind of forcing the two of them to be together? Is it going from something they thought would be a plus to something that is being a big miss, and that it's causing both shows to suffer to a certain degree?
Yeah.
We're going to break this down for you, but before we do, if you like this video, give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other updates. I think we should come at this first just with a full disclosure, because I am somebody who does watch both Grey's Anatomy and Station 19.
Yeah, and I am someone who does not. And I have seen some Station 19 when I'm able to, but we're journalists, so we cover different things at different times. So while he's covering Station 19, I'm watching other stuff and doing other stuff. So I'm unable to watch both shows. Now, what I've seen from Station 19, it seems like it's a good show all on its own, that it doesn't really need what's going on. I don't watch it.
Yeah.
So where this all kind of came from is we started noticing, especially this last half of the season, they have been crossing the show over almost every single episode, and they've made this show now so that it's very easy to cross over, because we have multiple characters that are having relationships with people on both shows. So just now, naturally, these shows are one show in a lot of ways, and it doesn't have to be that way. So we're sort of like, the thing that really kicked it off is the last promo that came out. So we were watching on Thursday.
Yeah.
I was, oh, what's gonna be coming up on Grey's Anatomy next? And it was like almost all Station 19. Oh, they're out in the woods, this bear's attacking, what do we do? And then the very end of it is just like, oh, and now they're just going into the hospital over on Grey's. And I was like, okay, that was the Station 19 promo. Where's the Grey's promo?
I think the problem here is a couple of different things. I think first and foremost, ABC kind of made it clear last year that they wanted to do a much more shared universe between the two shows. And they went ahead and made Krista Vernoff, who is the showrunner on Grey's, also the showrunner on Station 19. This is the first year that both shows have had a shared showrunner. And I don't know if this is for sure a network thing or this is something they really want, but it kind of feels like it's a network thing. That's why they pushed Grey's back an hour, why they put Station 19 in that time slot. And I think they do want a lot of cross-show integration, and I do get that on some level. And for me anyway, it really, to me, there has only been maybe a couple little storylines so far this season that I think, okay, you had to watch Station 19 in order to understand what's happening on Grey's, but at the same time, do you really need this to be a part of the universe where basically every single week there is like some little crossover storyline that's starting on one show and continuing on the other? Is that actually taking away from the ability of Station 19 to still tell a story on its own terms?
Yeah, I mean, like I've said, I haven't watched a lot of Station 19, but this show feels like it doesn't need Grey's Anatomy to stand on its own. The characters I've seen, they're great characters, the show is fun, there's good stories that are being told there. It feels really a lot more forced on us than it needs to be. And it's starting to feel like what you said, there isn't every episode where you have to have seen Station 19 to know what's going on Grey's. But there was one episode that just happened a couple weeks ago where I was watching Grey's. I'm like, I don't understand what's happening here. Where it was the episode where Catherine and Richard were having their intimate dinner party, celebrating their anniversary. And all of a sudden, Vic, who was an invited guest, through someone else, decided to invite someone else to this party. And I didn't get why she would invite somebody else. She's already a guest at somebody's party. She's not, so she's a guest inviting someone else. It was just kind of weird. I didn't get it. And then I was like, well, why would this Dean guy then, who I don't really know, decide to go to an intimate dinner party like this? Then somebody in the comments explained me, oh, well, that was explained on Station 19. Okay, well, great. Mm-hmm. I don't watch Station 19, so if I don't watch Station 19, I'm only watching Grey's, then I don't know what's happening. Or vice versa. So if you're over on Station 19, you're not watching Grey's, and now you've got this story being set up that Vic and Dean are going to a party, well, you're never going to know how that ends up ending up.
I think the hardest part of it to me is this idea of, here are two shows that weren't kind of originally designed to be this, now all of a sudden kind of becoming this. And it's not like Grey's Anatomy has some universe where this is required, because Private Practice was on the air for many years. And yes, there were occasionally crossover components between the two shows, but they were set in different places. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen every single week. They were allowed to be sort of their own shows, just like Station 19 and Grey's were originally allowed to be their own shows with a little bit of sort of crossover here and there. So the first problem here is pretty clearly that it feels a lot like this is being forced on both shows without it necessarily being something that feels organic all of the time.
Yeah, I mean, the Chicago series does a really great job at this, because if you want to watch just one of them or two of them or all three of them, it doesn't matter if you don't watch any of the others. You can just jump into one or two and not watch the third or not watch the other two, and it doesn't change anything. And then when they do have a crossover, it's an event. Like, it is, all three shows are all crossing over, buckle up. Yeah. You're only getting this once or twice a year, so you better be here for this event or you're gonna miss it. So it feels like, oh man, I better be home, because if I miss it, I miss it. Like, and it's gonna not happen again for a really long time.
The other part of that is that one Chicago crossover event, it's a true crossover. You really get all the actors just kind of interspersed throughout all the different shows. And I talked about this here or there in the coverage of Big Brother, the Mike Ehrmantraut rule of no half measures. If you're going to do something, you gotta go all out on it. And these little Grey's Anatomy Station 19 crossovers, they're such a half measure, because it feels like, okay, we're linking these shows up in a way where certain things are going to be confusing if you don't watch both of them. But they're also only one little storyline here or there, so they never feel altogether epic. And I think a part of the problem here is that because Grey's Anatomy has a lot of cast members that have been on that show for a really long period of time, my guess is that it probably is too costly for them to go to a lot of these actors and try to get them to appear on Station 19 as well. Maybe it doesn't work for the schedule, maybe it doesn't work for the budget, but, you know, we don't really see a lot of the big Grey's leads on the actual Station 19 episodes. It's usually more like, okay, here's Schmidt who's making an appearance, or we get Bailey because Bailey and Ben are together. It just feels like, it never feels like it's actually a real legitimate crossover, and instead it's these little things that don't feel like they're worth a lot of the hype. So we're not getting proper payoff on the hype, and instead we're getting hype, especially in the promos, that takes away from kind of the greatness of each individual story.
Yeah, and it's also, I think the thing I am just the most frustrated in is that I feel like now I'm being railroaded into having to watch Station 19 instead of wanting to, because this used to be a show where I was like, oh man, I gotta cover other stuff, so I don't get to watch it. It used to be that kind of feeling. Now, this last half of Grey's Anatomy season, now it's like, oh my god, okay, so now I have to watch it. It doesn't feel like I want to, it's I have to. And because I'm missing stuff.
Yeah.
So instead of it being clearly explained on both shows what's going on, so if you only want to watch Station 19, you don't miss out here, or vice versa. You have to watch both shows to really get a full picture of things. And I mean, and it does take away from some of the just special nature of a crossover. I mean, if they really wanted to continue to make it feel like it's one universe. You can still just have little Easter eggs in each episode. We were just talking about this before. If you've ever seen the Grindhouse series, where with Death Proof and Planet Terror. If you're watching Death Proof, you don't have to watch Planet Terror, but there are little Easter eggs in there. Like, you've got the two cops that are dealing with the car accident and everything that happened in Death Proof, but then when you're watching Planet Terror and you're in the hospital, there's these two cops dealing with that accident. But if you didn't watch the other movie, then it's just, oh, there's two cops over there. But if you did, then you're like, oh, cool, it's those guys. I just saw them in the other movie. And that's the kind of feeling that these two shows both deserved, because the way that they're pushing these two shows on each other, they're just doing a real disservice to both of them. And to me, it's especially a disservice to Station 19.
Yeah, it's because that Grey's Anatomy already has a reputation, right?
Yes.
It's been on the air for 16 years. And, Station 19 said some really big stuff this season. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it yet, but it feels like nobody's talking about that, because instead the number one narrative is, okay, we're all watching Grey's. Why aren't you pushing Station 19 on us so hard? We don't want this. It develops a bad sort of reputation for a show that doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, sort of like what you were saying about what happened with Breaking Bad and Low Winter Sun.
Yeah, Low Winter Sun got that same treatment. And the other thing that's probably really going to be weird is Grey's Anatomy is a really popular show on Netflix, and it has been. People are inevitably, at least so long as that agreement stays with ABC and Netflix, they're going to be watching Grey's over there, and then they're going to be watching these episodes and binging them. There's just going to be like all these weird disjointed elements, because they're not going to know to watch Station 19 beforehand to understand, why certain patients are there, or why Dean is at the dinner, or so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I want us to be solutions-oriented, so I want to try to figure out how can they manage to do this and do it better. Here's my suggestion. Do 2 or 3 crossovers a year. I understand they want to pair these shows up. Maybe you do an episode or 2 less of each show if you're going to do crossovers. Actually, maybe just 1 episode less. I don't want to take away from a lot of Grey's. But you find a way to incorporate more of the actors across both of the shows. You give Station 19 the budget and the support to make that happen if it's a cost issue, and you actually build up a story that is worth the promotion, because right now, if we see a promo for a crossover, we're not buying it anymore after how they built up that Station 19 premiere, and it was really just kind of like, no crossover really.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be something that's actually special, and I actually think they're going to have a harder time doing that now, because they do have multiple characters that are having relationships cross the shows. Yeah. It's just going to be, they've married the shows so heavily now that they've made it a situation where you really need to watch both shows. And that's a shame, because Grey's Anatomy is a show that has a legacy that deserves to still continue on and come to whenever its end is naturally on its own. And Station 19 is a show that deserves its own time in the spotlight and doesn't deserve to feel like it needs to be held up, because that's kind of with the promotion and the push, it's making me feel like this show can't stand on its own. And from what I've seen, that's not true. This show can stand on its own. It doesn't need Grey's Anatomy, and Grey's Anatomy doesn't need it.
Well, the ratings for Station 19 are fine. Like, they weren't exactly just like hitting it out of the park, but they weren't horrendous. It did enough on its own to justify a renewal. But the last thing that's on my mind on all of this is, what if, hypothetically, and I'm certainly not wishing for this, but what if Station 19 gets canceled, and then all of a sudden Grey's is still on the air? Are you going to then just forget that Station 19 is a thing? I mean, what happens to those characters now? Are you just going to say, oh, here's some random person from another firehouse who's going to take that sort of paramedic spot, and we're just going to forget about that show?
Yeah, or all those relationships, because now we do have multiple relationships that cross over to this other show. So if, knock on wood, this doesn't happen, but that if it happens that it gets canceled, then what ends up happening to Jackson and Vic, and we got Ben over there. Like, there is way too much of a marriage going on with this show now. Well, these two shows.
let's see exactly what happens. Maybe this is feedback they're going to pick up on and change moving forward. I'm sure they're aware of it. I've seen plenty of people talking about it on social media
but there
already.
are people who are really enjoying it, who are watching both shows that are really enjoying it. I think it's just kind of hard for the people like me that are not watching Station 19 to really know what's going on when I only am watching one.
Yeah, and to me, it's like 75% of the time I don't mind it. But
25% is a lot.
25% is a lot, and that's sort of the thing. And mostly, it's the promos that bother me probably more so than the actual show. Because like I said, I've been watching both shows, so I know what's going on. But it's just from a promo standpoint, I want Grey's Anatomy to be hyping up its big stories, and it can't really do that all that much if it's just focusing so much on Station 19 and the promos, because then people don't know what to get excited about. That doesn't help the long-term legacy of Grey's at all. But let's hear from you guys. Do you think this is a problem? Are we making too big of a deal out of it? Let us know in the comments. And if you do like this video, give us a like, subscribe, and you can support us further by checking the link in the description to the CARTERMATT store. And we'll see you here next time.